Hello and welcome to season 6, episode 15 of Dualistic Unity. I am ready, as ready as I'll be, right? Not prepared, just ready, attentive, aware. See what happens because I don't know where this is going to go or what's going to happen next necessarily, but I at least am paying attention to what's happening right now. Gives me a little bit more context for what might come next.
I am thoroughly interested and enthusiastic, I have to admit, because every time I get out of the way and I look at reality, I look at the world, I look at people, how we got here, where we might be going, how we interact with one another, I'm just awestruck because there's so much to learn from, so much. And I find it so funny because you could look back and go, well, I'm learning about history. You could look at people and learn about psychology. You could learn about the questions about life and say you're learning about philosophy, but all you're really doing is being an interested, enthusiastic human being. And that's all you're doing. We call it these different things, but really that's just stuff that we do, that we've given a label to. And so I'm really excited because we have a guest today that shares a good deal of my enthusiasm for life as a whole, as you can tell from all of her content, which I just have fallen in love with. I was showing my daughter today. She's like, "That's great, Dad. I'm doing stuff." I'm like, "All right, I'll come back later." But we are joined today by Felecia for the Win, who is a software engineer, philosopher, content creator, podcaster. She questions social constructs. She questions reality as a whole, and she's just a hell of a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Felecia, if you don't mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself, I'd be very appreciative.
Whoa. Well, I don't know if I'm going to do a better job than any of that. I think you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, recently I've been thinking deeply about just the concept of curiosity, right? And just how impactful curiosity can be and how fulfilling it is, right? So that's one of the reasons why I started and why I love doing content, creating content is because it's like a catalyst to keep me curious. And so yeah, that's what I love to do. I love to just be curious, open-minded, share stuff online. I was a software engineer for almost a decade and I miss it every day now. I haven't been doing it recently, but once an engineer, always an engineer, I hope. Even if we are engineering reality, right? There's plenty of different ways to engineer things. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, it's very fun and it's cool that you've been able to strike a bit of a balance because I know a number of engineers in my life and they always come from the logical perspective. Things have to make sense. And so it's a constant drive to make things make sense as opposed to remaining curious or figuring something out, like figuring your life out, figuring yourself out, figuring the right way to live, the right way to be. And I've found, at least in my own life, as I've sort of had that engineering. I almost did engineering in college and shifted away from it, but it's always been, figure something out as opposed to remaining curious. And a lot of it surrounded myself, figure myself out. What's wrong with me? What's there to fix? What do I have to do next in order to achieve or accomplish the next thing? And so I found that I wasn't so curious about anything outside of improving myself. And, more and more, especially in the last couple of years, as I've let go a little bit of trying to improve myself or get somewhere, I've found that I do become a lot more curious. Like life has a lot more fullness to it. And there's a wonder to it, I guess. And it's so funny how you can go for so long. Like if something didn't have a reason, to look into, if I knew it wasn't gonna improve me or knew that or wasn't sure whether it was gonna improve me, like it wasn't worth doing. And I don't think that's what life is all about at all. And so I'm curious, have you always been a very curious person? Is that more of a recent sort of transition, or was, younger Felecia just as curious as you are now?
I have always been a curious person. Um, yeah, always. And when I was a kid, it used to get me in trouble. So I went to private schools my entire life. My parents were heavily into the church and, they kind of made a mistake, I'll say, of they entertained my curiosity a little bit more than they should have. Like we used to, like they were really into the church, right? So we would have like family dinners and they would bring up a Bible verse and they would, look to 8-year-old Felecia and be like, well, what do you think? And I would tell them and it would be cool. It would be dope. It's like, wow, like it was amazing to be a kid and to like have parents who encouraged critical thinking and like thinking for yourself and like expressing yourself and having your own opinions about things. But as I got older and older, you know, that being aligned with their interests started to drift further and further apart. And same for like, teachers at school, I started to be like, wait, fuck authority, man. Like I got into like questioning authority and all of this kind of stuff. So like, yeah, I would say that like I've always been curious. The thing that I loved about engineering was actually the fact that there were so many constraints. So it's like, with engineering, you're basically given a problem and you're given a solution. And it's basically like a puzzle where it's like, you have to figure out how to get from like point A to point B. And it's just incredibly satisfying. So like I loved that. I loved making algorithms. That was like my favorite thing. And I also loved squashing bugs. Like whenever there was a bug or like a glitch in the system, that would be like my favorite thing because it's like Inspector Gadget, right? To like try and figure out what's going on. And then it's just so satisfying when you squash it. So I miss all of that about engineering. But ultimately, I quit because of that, because I felt like it wasn't creative enough. I felt like it was taking so much of my time. And I had tried so hard to get there. Like, I taught myself how to code, and I basically did that for years and years of just coding like side projects on my own. Finally got into corporate America, got a taste of that corporate America check, that corporate America lifestyle. It was awesome at first. But after years, I was like, wait, is this like really it? Like, this is nowhere near as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be. And yeah, I don't know. There were a lot of things that I didn't really resonate with about like the corporate America structure. And so I just cashed in on my 401k, went to zero, and literally was like, I am going to figure out how to make content creation work. And I don't recommend that to anyone else because I was not a content creator before I did that. Like there was no reason for me to think that like I was going to be able to like get away with that. But here we are. It's been 2 years and we're alive. We have a roof over our head. So it's interesting how the universe kind of like, you know, makes way when you push through.
Yes, yes, it absolutely does. That's why I like the expression, God helps those who help themselves. It's almost like it's God helping itself, oddly enough, right? It's like that which sustains life, life sustains, something along those lines. I really relate to a lot of what you were saying in terms of curiosity and especially coding. I taught myself how to code back when it was still GW Basic,
Oh,
and basic.
wow.
Oh yeah, no, I'm old for sure. But one thing I always loved about coding was it was being engulfed in the process of creating the process of going from A to B, sure, but also just the process of how is that going to happen? And you're overseeing it. You're getting a bigger picture. You're starting to learn other languages to do other things from other parts of what it is you're working with. And I always found it just fascinating that it's not just about the coding so much as the awareness of the environment and how to influence it using that awareness. And so I would say that to some degree, you haven't changed in your vocation. It's just that you've changed the environment that you're working within. You've changed the size of the computer and thus the amount of variables that you have to deal with. Because if you look at us very much like an intelligence or a computer, we are, I guess, moving according to programming to a very large degree, and that programming is largely divisive. It's very much based on our identity and how we see ourselves and how that tears us apart. And that makes it very hard for us to create a system that isn't divisive, that isn't creating toxicity. And so by you challenging yourself, getting beyond the idea of yourself, even beyond what you thought the path to happiness was. You've already broken your programming. You've already changed the way that you're manipulating or interacting with the environment. And thus you're making ripples that make it easier for everybody else to change too. So I'd say you're still very much a software engineer. It's just that you've upgraded to a far larger machine.
Very cool. That's really enlightened, and I love that 100%. And that's one of the things that I love most about this podcast, and like one of the content pillars, if I may, of this podcast is that entire theme of, questioning what does it mean to even be you. It's really interesting that, that's kind of like a philosophical thing. Like there's a bunch of people who will say like that question doesn't matter. But you'd be surprised how many people go their entire lives just like running on a script that they told themselves was the story of their life from like high school or something. It's like they never like rethink, like, wait a second, I'm not even in my hometown anymore. Like all of that happened there, like doesn't have to consume me. It doesn't have to like be all of me. But it's just so true. Like in that way, we 100% are programmed because there are so many different things in our society that basically tell us that that is the case, right? That like the things that you do when you're incredibly young do go on to change the entire trajectory of your lives, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
Certainly. There's the quote, I think therefore I am. We've discussed a number of times, and how that's kind of something that people look to and think that that's actually something that does solidify what I am. And so then I wouldn't be anything that exists outside of, that conceptual idea, right? That gets built throughout my life and based off of all of these assumptions. And then just in my desire to know something, to have some degree of certainty. Like right now, if I weren't thinking of anything, I wouldn't really know. Like this situation that I'm in right now, like wouldn't really make that much sense until I start thinking and solidifying it. And then there's this whole sort of realm of like knowing and certainty. And I know what's happening right now and I know myself. But if I don't know myself in that conceptual way, then maybe I don't know as much what's happening right now. And real quick, can you hear anything in the back? Okay. It's got it. Anyway, we don't have to get into that right now. But if I'm not thinking about myself necessarily in that way, there's almost a discomfort in that uncertainty. And instead of being willing to sit in that for a sec or just continue to pay attention, I'll run from that. I'll want to come up with like, no, I can know something though, right? And as I do that, then it kind of like masks anything that may come up. Because when I am uncertain, it's like all those things that I've been sure about in the past maybe don't make as much sense, or the reasons that I'm doing something don't make as much sense. My habitual actions don't make as much sense. And that's when you can, I think, start to break down more habits when you are willing to, sit there and not be so sure of things. Because most of the habitual stuff is in response to, another thing that I'm sure of, a way of viewing myself in a different way that then caused me to, like the habit of drinking. We were talking about this for a bit before. Like if I have a habit of judging myself for acting in a certain way and I don't want to act that way, I'll drink in response to that. But that's based off of an existing assumption. And so it's interesting when you're willing to not be so sure of what's going on. I think that's a lot of where curiosity stems from, and just where a lot of the potential for freedom or just thinking about things a little bit differently and change stems from.
1,000%. And I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, it's one thing to understand, right? That like you can reinvent yourself anytime. But it's like another thing when you actually have that like experiential, like you're experiencing that, for example, in the form of like an identity crisis or like in an existential crisis. Those are not fun at all. I wonder, have either of you ever had an identity crisis or like an existential crisis before?
I actually come from a really, really interesting history of a number of different things. I actually had borderline dissociative identity disorder and a number of other things. I went through numerous existential crises and other types of crises and whatnot. At one point, well, actually, a few different points, I thought I was crazy, and a couple other points, I was suicidal. I've gone through a lot of different phases in my life, but it was it was the recognition of uncertainty that saved me. Ultimately, it was the recognition that that's what I had been running from. The fact that I didn't know, so I pretended I knew, and that added all the weight.
Mm. What about you,
Mm,
Andrew?
Yeah, it's funny because we've talked about this in the podcast before, but Ray and I come from very, very different, but also like very different places on the surface, but very similar in the sense of trying to be sure of something, trying to know something, trying to have, control of at least how I'm viewed or looked at or perceived. I've referenced in the past like this the moment like 2.5 years ago where it kind of hit me that this story I've been telling myself was all based on experiences that I had had. Andrew, when I thought about Andrew, it wasn't here. It was all these things that have happened throughout my life. And so if I was only ever here, even in all of those experiences, I was here, but this narrative has only been, born from the past, then maybe that's not what I am. And maybe I'm not the story that I tell myself. Maybe I am just here, just right now. So there was I thought, and in the moment, it was like a very, very explosive, sort of profound realization because I was, 25 or something, and I had that narrative, and I had been sure of it kind of in varying ways throughout my life, and it was the first time I had ever wondered if it was me, and I kind of saw almost like very clearly that it wasn't. Like I've always been relatively logical and rational, and like I couldn't rationalize it if I've only ever been, here, then the idea couldn't possibly be me. And there was basically the whole podcast has been my unraveling of that and like what that means. Cause that's a side of it that like, yeah, you're not what you think, but there's a lot that's informed that because I'm not just a conceptual idea. I'm, the way I talk, the hesitations that I had, that I have, the choices that I make, the things that I do, the way I live my life, and this whole thing has been informed, by assumptions, and some come from society, some come from family and parents, some come from, friends, relationships, structures. I grew up Catholic, went through the schooling system, and that's really where a lot of my shit comes from was just that constant sort of judgment, self judgment and self measurement as I went, mostly through school. Religion did a bit of a number as well, but they're all sort of informing this story, the way I
Mm.
see things, because the story isn't just me, it's like how I see the world. They kind of go hand in hand, and my ego is my ideas of everything, not just myself, and the certainty about that, like to know what's going on. So anyway, that was there I go. That was sort of the initial point that hit me, that shifted, and then the podcast started a couple months ago. Randomly came across Ray, sort of a friend sent me his account and was like, "Hey, this guy sounds like he's talking about some of the similar stuff that you've been talking about."
Now, that said,
Cool.
of course, we have to know about your own experiences with an existential crisis because obviously you've gone through a number of places where you've questioned yourself and probably started from scratch in a number of ways. And I'd love to know more.
Cool. Yeah, I have had two existential crises before. Neither time was fun. But I do think it's just so interesting. It's like you hear someone say something and you're like, for example, an example of this is, when people say you're growing up and like there's always someone who says like learn a skill. And you're like, okay, whatever. But like as you grow up, you're like, damn, wait, like I probably really should have learned a skill, right? Another one is, you hear time and time again people talking about how like corporate America, or like when you're making so much money, like people who make money aren't happy, or like something crazy like that, right? Like the people who make the most money, they're not even that happy, or like money doesn't buy happiness, whatever. But like when you're working retail, making like 30K a year, it's like, fuck you, your money doesn't buy happiness. Like, what are you talking about? But it's so true. Like, I was the most depressed I have ever been when I was making the most money I ever made in my life. And so that dichotomy basically is what started the existential crisis, where it's like, hold up. So what is the whole point of being here? Like, what is even the point? Because I'm aware of the fact that like this is just some BS society game, right? To your point, society kind of tells us the story of our lives, whether that be from the church or family or books or movies. So you're walking the story that like you've been told, and then you get there, and why aren't you fulfilled? And that's basically what started the whole existential crisis of like, well, why the fuck am I even here? Like, what is really the point? And basically got to the point of realizing like, yeah, like in a way everything absolutely is meaningless. And that was a thought that was sad to me at first, but then it became, wait, this is kind of awesome because I get to assign meaning to everything. So the second existential crisis was, I can't exactly remember like what started that, but I remember like coming back to that thought of like, that's my job, right? So that's my real job as a human being on earth, is like assigning the meaning to things so that I have the experience that I want to, that I prefer. And that's my take on existential crises. But another thing that I got out of that was, when we look at people who are depressed, right? That's something that they say a lot. It's like things are meaningless, right? And we kind of like write it off like, no, they're not. I actually think we should say, no, you might be onto something. You're like right there. All you have to do is like push a little bit more, perhaps. But I know that might be like a radical thought. I don't
Well, no. Oh man, because and it's because if you're depressed because you think things are meaningless, and you're not willing to question, well, like, why do I assume that things should be meaningful? Am I looking for
know.
someone else to make things meaningful? Am I passing off the responsibility of meaningfulness to someone else to tell me, to tell me that what I'm doing is the right thing to do, to
Mm.
validate my perspective, to give me a fucking guarantee that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm on the right path, that I'm going the right direction. What if that wasn't the case? What if there was no right direction? We only followed them as a way to soothe the discomfort of not knowing right now, right? And so, oh man, yeah. And so much of our life, and this kind of brings up one of your videos that you posted recently about authenticity and being original and having
Mm.
original thoughts. And I think it was a friends only post, but it got my wheels spinning. I watched it earlier today, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a very fun conversation, because as long as you're looking somewhere
Mm.
else, you can't really have original thoughts. You keep following someone, looking to someone to even in moment to moment interactions, not wanting to be judged. It's like, I want this person to tell me that what I'm saying is okay to say. Is this the right thing to say? Is this the right response to have? And so we have all of these social constructs, societal constructs, societal, ways of interacting, small talk, like, hey, how you doing? Pretty good. How are you? Pretty good. Yeah, weather's pretty nice, huh? Yeah, yeah, it is. It is pretty nice. And it's like all these very safe sort of things. But I think we're starting to see more and more people willing to delve in. And I came across, actually, it's just random sort of thing. Theo Vaughn, someone was talking about how he is basically like someone who lets his internal dialogue. I don't know if you're familiar with Theo Von.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a comedian that says like a bunch of like whack ass random stuff all the time and seems like kind of like a kid in a sense almost. And there was a video I saw, kind of a breakdown of Theo Von saying how he basically just like allows his internal dialogue to be expressed, and everyone finds him very funny because all this stuff's very random. It's very unique and very like I've never heard of anyone even comparing things like that. And how much of that, I wonder how much of that is in everyone, but it's just how much of a wall do we have? How much do I not, how little faith do I have in myself to just say that thing? It's like, when there's a lull in conversation to bring something up, you're like, thought about this? Here's a thing. Here's this, here's that, here's the thought. Like, how much of a wall do we have? And that wall is like our assumptions, and it's factored in based on everything we've experienced. Maybe there was a point in our life where we did say something random and someone's like, that was a random stupid thing to say, so we stopped taking those jumps out of hesitation because that person judges themselves for something, and they have their own sort of background. But I think that's where the authenticity really comes from, the originality. And we're seeing almost it's like a back and forth between people holding on to structures and traditions and the ways that things have been, and those willing to let go and explore and see anew, because we've always been in the midst of evolution. It's not like we've evolved and now we're here and now we're just set, achieved peak, human experience and yada yada yada. It's like, no, we're evolving right now. But as long as you're holding on to what's been, the structures, the conceptual sort of constructs, the right way to act and live, this is the best we can do sort of thing, it's a lot tougher to allow those new authentic perspectives. And it's, about the world, about ourselves, about all of that. And so I think open-mindedness, curiosity, all go hand in hand. And it makes sense why those who are curious and more open-minded oftentimes come to more original perspectives, because it's all in there for all of us. Just how much are we holding on?
Wow. Yeah. Honestly, and that's even been something that like I've been wanting to work on myself personally. Probably like within the past week, something that I've been like thinking a lot about. I wish I could say I literally heard Rick Rubin say this. I don't know. I heard someone talking about something that Rick Rubin said. So hopefully he did actually say this. He was asked how often, when he's in the creation process, how often does he consider the audience? And he said never. And that, I mean, it's so simple, but that like truly inspired me and like made me think about, wait, how am I approaching content creation even, right? Like I might consider myself someone who has original thoughts, but like, am I willing to like put something out there that doesn't consider the audience or the algorithm at all? I don't think I am, but I am interested to explore that realm. But hell yeah, it's absolutely fucking scary. I mean, it's scary, but yeah, you're right. Like, you're so right. Like, what if we all have whatever that essence of Theo Von in all of us, right? And honestly, I think that like when I started content, I was more that way. Um, but as you know, I learned the algorithm, but like at the same time, the algorithm like learned me. Like the algorithm trained me, right? Like it's a two-way street. I was also trained by the algorithm to like not say certain things if I didn't want certain reactions. And I do think it's very important in this journey to hold on to something where it's like, you know what? No, fuck the algorithm. I'm saying fuck a lot. Is that all right?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. All right. Like we need to hold on to like fuck the algorithm. Like that's an element of that needs to exist, if only but an element. So yeah, 100%. You're so right.
That is really well said. I'd like to throw, I guess, a perspective at you, and it's something that comforts me. I don't give a fuck about the algorithm because, frankly, I've just gone through too much shit in my life. But on the other hand, that's why I don't have nearly as many followers as either of you, and it's because I'm not catering to them. I'm speaking for myself and myself alone. But that doesn't do much when it comes to generating traffic for a podcast or generating an audience. And so when I met Andrew, Andrew was still very much in the thick of gaming the algorithm. Right now, he does that from time to time, and the rest of the time he throws shit out there that's for him. And so on the one hand, he does cast a wider net, because that's the thing, is people have this tendency of thinking like, well, the more people that are watching, obviously the better the quality of the content. It's like, no, because the majority of people want to watch stupid shit, right? Things that validate them, things that fucking satisfy them, things that give them a reason to compare and compete and do all that other stuff. And so if you're creating anything of actual quality, anything that actually incites a person to be themselves, there's no profit in that. There's no glorification in that. There's no fight to pick there. You're going to have less of an audience. But how much more are those people making a ripple because they're actually paying attention and not just self-soothing? Right. So on the one hand, you throw out the wide net, and then you bring them in, and then you let the ones that aren't ready run away. It's like, here's something a tad deeper. Oh, bye. Right. Like I did an experiment when I first started on TikTok. I made a video about manifestation, just saying that your mentality really does give you the ability to create anything you want in your life. You can access all of your potential, all of your creativity in each and every moment. Just let yourself loose in the world. And everybody just loved that. And then the next video, I'm like, but you have to ask yourself why you want the thing you want. Is it coming from a place of lack? Boom, I lost like half the followers like the very next day. And it's because people want to feel good. They don't necessarily want to feel grounded. And this is why when you were saying about your existential crisis, I loved both of them. The second one is, I would caveat with without attachment. Like, nothing has meaning, so you give it meaning according to what you prefer now, but without attachment, without letting those preferences actually define you and become a template in their own, because then they lead back to that fear. Then they lead back to that, I got to be this. This is how I'm happy. And it's through the act of changing, it's through the act of transition, of opening our mind, of seeing new things, of gaining context, that we actually feel like ourselves. We feel alive. That's where we're happy. It's never in finding that groove. Right. And that's that mentality that we're trying to get out of. That's that existential crisis. Oh my God, I actually haven't been existing. I've been in my head this whole fucking time. Right. And then we're like, well, what do I do now? And then we dive back into our head. But the practice is being here.
Mm. So well said. 1000%. And also, like, I really like that you like this phrase, being alive, right? Like, what does it even mean to be alive? Like, we are constantly on the edge of every moment, constantly on the edge, teetering on the edge, and from moment to moment to moment. And so, I don't know, I just saw that there's probably a parallel there. Like, even when we think about creativity, it's like, cool, you can like play to the algorithm, you can like gain this following, whatever. But like, if you're not on that edge, you're not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to experience that feeling of like, I'm alive. I'm fucking alive. I'm here, you know? And I think that's probably what it's all about. That's probably what we're all chasing.
As somebody in their mid 40s, I will say, yeah, that's exactly it. Because that's often the problem, isn't it? We have an idea in our head of how we're going to achieve happiness, stability, where the ideal life is. And we don't recognize that it's not actually the end result that we're addicted to. It's the process of going somewhere. It's the process of distracting ourselves from who we are right now. Right. And that's really all it is. But once you stop distracting yourself and you're like, right, but I go with me wherever I go. So that's kind of the important part. I should be looking at who I am, not who is in the idea, but who is in the evidence, which is why it's so important to throw yourself in, which is why it's so important to go out there and experience things, because that's how you gain self-knowledge, not as a concept, but a feeling in your bones.
Wow, totally. And also, like, when we think about the moments in our life where we feel most alive, a lot of the times it's like when, okay, in a physical sense, the moments where we feel most alive are often those moments like when we're literally teetering on the brink of death even, right? So like people feel alive on roller coasters, right? Like like you're hyper aware of what it means to like have a life. Like there's a life that's yours. Like, and it's like, whoa, when you're like hyper aware of that, that's like when we feel alive. So whenever we're just like not being curious and just playing to the script, just reciting the script of the day, we're not going to feel alive. We're going to feel like a character in a simulation. It's not fun. It's safe, but it's not fun. And I think that's ultimately the choice that we have to make, right?
Safe like a prison cell.
Exactly. We get very, very comfortable with those prison cells because they're secure. I know this as I'm sitting in this small room here. I know these walls. I know the extent. I've explored this, and I think a lot of the shifts for people, you know, an existential crisis is like that prison cell all of a sudden goes boom, and it's like, whoa, there's a lot of things that I'm not so aware of. And so there's sort of like when you explore the prison cell, it starts out like very fucking small, and it's like it's all lit up because you've explored all of it. Then it like goes boom, and it opens up a little bit more. Maybe it gets twice as big, but it's all dark because you haven't explored it. Like, whoa, I don't know what's in there. I'm afraid of that. But the uncertainty of it, you know, not knowing what's in there, could be scary or it could be exciting. It's like, whoa, there's a bunch. I don't know what's in there, you know, or the door's open. You're like, the door is open. The prison door is open. I don't know what's out there. And that's scary, but it's also exciting. And that's the, you know, back and forth with freedom is it's entirely uncertain. It's not like I think we're running, you know, and trying to get somewhere to become free, trying to build ourselves up to become free, as opposed to recognizing like freedom can only happen right now when you're not holding on to so many things. And so the part of my existential crisis that I kind of left out was my entire life leading up to that point and kind of going through similar to what you were saying with making, you know, a bunch of money and realizing, oh, this is the most depressed I've ever been at the same time. Like I had a bunch of ideas growing up of, you know, the right things to do, the right way to live, you know, go to the, you know, I played a bunch of sports and like wanted to play sports in college, was able to do that, go to the best school that I could, was able to do, you know, close to that. And then it was interesting that it started to break down as when I was in college, like when it was this, because I didn't, a lot of kids went into banking and consulting afterwards, and it was a big sort of pre-professional situation. And I didn't have, I was like, yeah, I don't see the point. I don't find those things to be as interesting as other things. And so started to break down, like college wasn't as much about getting the best job anymore. It was more for itself. And, you know, I enjoyed it as best as I could and made the most of it. And a lot of kids, even with, I played baseball, a lot of kids throughout college, I saw it year after year after year. Kids who were very good stopped making it about the season we were having. They started making it about becoming a pro baseball player. And so and a lot of them, as they started to focus on that, played way fucking worse. And I found that to be the case in high school for myself as I started to make it about getting to the next thing. I got way worse. And then I kind of had to let go. I came this close to quitting. I was like, fuck it. I don't care how this goes anymore. And all of a sudden I started playing way better again. But we're constantly discounting. We're constantly not experiencing where we're at or being fully involved in the situation that we're in our lives, like being alive. Like you said, in order to placate to the building of this idea, like my conceptual resume, I'm just going to keep accomplishing things. But then we get addicted to fucking accomplishing things because I don't want to be left with myself right now. And so we do so many things we don't even realize what we're running from anymore. And so there can be points when you stop running so much, you relax a little bit more. That this whole fucking cart, it's like you're running with a fucking cart on your back and you stop and it's got some momentum and all of a sudden it starts hitting you a little bit and you're like, oh, that's what I was running from there. That's what I was running from there. And it can feel like you're sort of regressing in a sense, but really you're just gaining context and paying more attention to a lot of the things that you've been missing, be it about yourself or about the world or about reality that we're just constantly kind of trying to distract ourselves from. And that's why the world is like, you know, it's a world full of convenient ways to distract ourselves that don't really have to do with things. You know, we attach ourselves to a professional sports team thinking like, and people will say like, we won the championship. It's like, motherfucker, you didn't do shit. You paid for 3 tickets all year. There's nothing to do with you. What is going on? But because otherwise, if it doesn't make much sense to be freaking the fuck out when they win or lose. But that's because we don't want to look at ourselves. We don't want to be left with ourselves. So we just distract in a multitude of ways. Big one being making money, a big one being accomplishing things. But
when you were talking about the jail cell, it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes by Soren Kierkegaard. And he goes, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And it's like, that's what it is. That's what it is. Or like another way is, going back to your jail cell analogy, is better the hell you know than the hell you don't, right? And like so many people fall into that pattern of like just sticking with the hell that they know than the hell that they don't. But you don't feel alive that way. The most exciting time of like the past 10 years of my life was when I decided to do the dumbest thing ever, cash in my 401k and quit my fucking job. Like, it was like, there's not a single soul on the planet who's going to say that this is a good idea. Oh, I'm going to go become a content creator? Really? I'm going to leave this engineering job, really, that I like worked so hard to get here. It's so stupid. So exciting. Felt alive. Worth it. 100% worth it. Even if it wouldn't have worked out. And that's the other thing, right? Like, I feel like another like potential philosophy that folks out there could have for like living life is like understanding like every day we're creating memories, right? Like that could be a point, like, so what's the point of life? Like you get to choose. One possible point is like you're creating memories for yourself. So like if you just play to the script, like what memories are these? When you're 80 and you look back, is that what you're going to be proud of? Like, oh, my biggest life accomplishments is like I didn't have debt, or like I didn't quit my job, like all of these things that society tells us is like super important, and it's like those aren't even high quality memories, bro.
Yeah, but if you aren't doing that stuff, society can't keep going in the direction that it's going, and the people who are benefiting from society going in that direction aren't going to benefit anymore. So you definitely got to keep going to work and prioritizing the job. Just don't
And
ask any
by the
more
way,
questions.
all of those people, they're not doing that. They're not playing by the script in any way, right? So what's the phrase where it's like do as I say, not as I do.
Straight
Right.
straight up, absolutely. No, it's really interesting, but again, I mean, it's kind of the point of what we're all doing. Like, we don't recognize it, but everything that we've built over the last several thousand years has very much been on the back of egotism. It's very much been on the back of my value goes up or down according to my assumptions and how I compare myself to others. And that mentality has been the cornerstone of pretty much everything that we've done in terms of religion. I mean, even psychology for the longest time revolved around the idea that if you don't have a solid identity, that's a fucking problem, right? As opposed to, evidence of your maturity, which is why I liked Jane Lovinger's steps of ego development, that at some point, it's important that you stop thinking about yourself so much, that you actually start to be able to relate to others rather than just self-soothing and self-defining, right? And so it's so interesting that when you look at the lessons that we're going through and you look at the consequences of not learning this simple lesson, that in trying to be more than yourself, you are willing to basically create your own tunnel vision, hurt others by virtue of that tunnel vision, all for the idea that one day you'll be more. And so we can't work together. We can't see each other. And this lesson is abundantly clear all the time, right up to the point where all of a sudden now that the internet is here and things are changing and AI is starting to come into fruition and all that, we're starting to have these little bubbles of conversation about what the fuck is authenticity? What does it mean to be myself? What does it mean to be creative? And we're coming to these conversations because, frankly, we've been operating off of assumptions. We've been operating off of concepts for so long that we've lost the zest for life. We've lost all meaning. We've lost all sense of connection to existence as a whole. And it's because we're doing a lot of what other people have said to do, and none of it is coming from us. None of it is coming from, here I am in this moment, actually determining what I want to do instead of reacting to what I feel I need to do or what I fear will happen. right? You actually have that choice. And I think that's the reason it's so important for you to be doing what you're doing, for you to be a content creator, because there has always been a plethora of people out there encouraging egotism. There have always been people out there saying, get a job, get to work, stop being a hippie, right? Always. But it's been very rare that people have been able to stand up and say the opposite to that, that you are okay being yourself, just be enthusiastic, enjoy your life, look around, holy shit, right? And it's been so rare because most of the time the system was so dictated by the opposite mentality that they'd burn us at the stake. And so here you are, abandoning security, abandoning the path, forging ahead, and by virtue of that, gaining more insights and more lessons as to why you did it to begin with. Because now you're actually experiencing it. You're like, well, I know it's going to be good for me. Fuck, I don't know. And then you jump and you're like, it was good for me, right? And then you're actually speaking from a place where you know that. Where you know that it's not speculation. You're not like, one day when you're rich, you'll be happy. You're not saying that. You're like, you can be happy right fucking now. Right now. Just let go. Just be yourself. Throw caution to the wind. Admit you don't know. Be uncertain. And I love it. I see this more and more in the last 5 years. Because again, I've been talking about this shit for 20 some odd years. And for a long time it was not well received by any means. By any means, especially when people are afraid or wanting things. Right? They don't want to hear, what you want is actually a sign of a sense of lack. And they're like, shut the fuck up. They don't want to talk about that at all. Right. And so there's been such a shift. Like the fact that you and Andrew are out there doing your thing inspires me daily. It makes me incredibly excited about the world that my daughter is growing up into, because you could look at the world and go, yeah, well, we got all these problems. But the world you're looking at isn't the world. You don't actually know. What you do know is the ripple that you're making right now. And that's enough for me.
Wow. That was beautiful.
Yeah, the sense of what I want has been something I've been wondering about for a while, because you start to bring that into question and you start to realize like how uncertain everything is, right? Like I don't know what's next. So like how could I really know what I want? And so it's hit me more recently that like maybe I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. And there's been sort of at least, a few months ago, year ago, like this nagging feeling that I should know what I want. Like it's something I got to figure out. Got to write down and write pros and cons for things that I should want and get that all filed away and figured out and then just, put the blinders on and run and go for it and shoot for it. But maybe it's not about that at all. Maybe it's not wanting and then getting and because then it's like, okay, then what? Like then what? And I think that the death example you brought up, or whatever you said about death, made me think about, wondering about what your life or what you want your life to be all about, like the memories when you're about to die, and putting yourself in that spot, because like when you're about to, end, say, quote unquote, that it's not about how you look or how you seem to someone else, because there's nothing to take with afterwards. So it's like, what would you actually want to do with this life? And at this point, for me, it's like have like be myself and have impact, whatever that is, but I don't know what it is. And so what can I do if maybe I'd like to see a slightly more authentic world? It's like all I can do is be more authentic. That's it. That's the extent. It's not a structure, it's not a path, it's not a thing that I can figure out how to do. It's only something I can be right now, but that doesn't give me the comfort of feeling like I'm doing the right thing, that I'm on the right path. And like that whole narrative, the right way, the right thing, the right place to get or thing to do is all fucking horseshit. Like it's entirely horseshit. And so what I want, if I can't know it as something in the future, then what do I want right now for right now? A little more relaxed, be a little more authentic, and then that informs my life and my decisions. But it doesn't really have anything to do with what I own, with what I have, with how I'm looked at, how many followers I have, all that stuff. That doesn't really, unless I start thinking about it. But then as soon as I dive into that, then it's like everything starts coming up, and all the measurement and the judgments and whatnot. But when I think about what I really want, it comes back to, where I'm at right now and the things that I'm doing, and it just, I don't know, a little more relaxed, a little more authentic, and then see what happens and actually be there paying attention as it does play out.
Dude, that has been something, the whole like wanting, not wanting, that has been like the most recent like mind trip that I've been dealing with, is like every now and then there's nothing that I want. There's like nothing that I want to like do or accomplish, or it's just, I'll just feel like I'm just like here. And it's a weird spot to be in, because it's like, I mean, it's just zero motivation to like move forward. And so yeah, that's like a weird one. But I think it could be good, right? I think it's one of these other examples of like you're like right there on the edge of something, because it's probably really good to not want. I mean, in fact, the Buddha, right? The original Buddha, the OG, said that life is suffering because we have this inherent, incessant desire to like just want things over and over, no matter what we get. It's never enough. And especially in our society today, right? Like that's like what they want all of us to believe. Like in our soul, is like, oh yeah, no, you bought those shoes. Not enough though. No, you have this and that and this and that, but it's not enough. And it's just like, society, corporations, whatever, they want us to be on this cycle of like life is inadequate. They'd love it if our entire lives were a series of inadequate events. So it's kind of like probably a good thing that it's like, you know what, buying that or like going to that place or posting this video and this video getting 1 million views, like that doesn't mean anything to me. It's probably good, but every now and then it's totally trippy. So yeah, I totally resonate with that.
That's great. I really enjoy that. And it's just the fact that, again, like life is so very different when you come into that gap where it's no longer what should I be doing, but what do I want to do? And if you're not doing anything for the sake of validating yourself, you're just left with this kind of void. You're like, like I don't actually know. And it takes a little while at that point, because you're so used to doing things for a reason that it never occurred to you to do the thing for the sake of it, just for the sake of doing it. Because now everything you do, you're fully attentive to. So you're always growing. So mission accomplished. No matter what you do at this point, you're getting the most out of it. But we're not used to that. We're used to thinking, but it's not until I get to an end result that I benefit. But now it's every step of the way we benefit, which I think is really interesting. But we want that journey, right? And so society around us is just emulating this very old mentality that we still get tempted to use. And what was interesting is that you were talking about how, the people around us, the world around us, very much want us to, stop using our imaginations, just get to work and kind of plan our lives. Andrew and I were talking about words recently, which is, I know, a post that you also did regarding words and where they come from and all that. It's really interesting because the word serious, the etymology is actually in a series. Right? So it's so interesting that when we are serious, we're always thinking within a timeline. Right? Whereas when we feel enthusiastic, we are here in the moment, in the present, as ourselves, which I always found interesting, because the etymology of enthusiasm is to be possessed by God, is to actually be full of life, of existence itself, which only ever happens in the moment, and you're not serious at all.
This guy is good.
Oh, I know.
Jesus Christ, that is amazing. Oh my gosh. Like my entire perspective of the word enthusiasm has just shattered. That is amazing.
It's one of my
And
favorites.
words are awesome.
Absolutely. Well, you did a great post the other day. I think the word was Jouska, which I thought was so very interesting, because it's a word implying, I believe it was a conversation that you're having in your head that's not actually happening. And what I love is that normally we would just use multiple words, like inner dialogue or or speculative discussion, that kind of thing. But instead, we've combined it all down to one word. And I thought that was so interesting, because if you think about that, at some point, let's just say a decade, 2 decades down the road, people are just going to use Jouska in a conversation, right? It's like, what were you doing? Jouska. And if you were to take us from now and put us there, we'd be like, what did they just say? Like the English language has totally, completely shifted, but we've done that so many times. We had discussed this earlier on the podcast, and I didn't know this at all. The word believe up until the 12th century just meant to care for. And
Mm,
after the 12th century became to take without question. And isn't that convenient? You know, because that means that when Jesus is like, believe in God, he's not saying take it without question. He's saying love God. He's
mm.
saying love reality, right? He's saying to pay attention, to care for something. It had nothing to do with a concept and everything to do with an attitude towards life. And I thought that was so interesting because as soon as the word changed, religion changed. Everything changed. You know, it was shortly after that that some of the darkest shit in the Catholic Church came to be.
Wow. Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, that actually reminds me of you guys are probably familiar with Bashar, right? Right. Okay. So one of like the best Bashar bars ever. And my husband was really more so into Bashar than I, but like this is one that like I'll never forget. He was talking about Jesus. And the idea was when Jesus said, I am the way and the light, he didn't mean follow me. He meant be the way that I am, right? Like the way that I am is the way and the light. You're Jesus too, right? Like we're all gods, right? And it's just so interesting how the meanings of things change based on the intentions of the people like dispersing the meetings into the public. But, you know, once again, it's like you can almost believe whatever you want, right? So that's also kind of ties back into like my views on Christianity and things. Just like, yeah, no, I can agree that like Jesus was probably like a dope dude, but like I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that like he wanted everyone to like follow him and like worship him. So that's my perspective on it all. It's like, no, I literally think he meant be the way that I am, not like follow me and like do blood sacrifices and all of this other crazy shit. But another radical thought, 2 for 2.
Oh, I highly recommend, if you haven't already, to read the Gospel of Thomas. And it's
I
because
haven't.
it came from the Nag Hammadi scrolls. So it's a bunch of Gnostic scrolls that were basically thrown out of the Bible when it was originally compiled. And so they were lost for centuries, and somebody found them in a cave near the Dead Sea. And the Catholic Church, of course, just shut shitloads of them down, like the Gospel of Judas Iscariot, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and there's the Gospel of Thomas, you know, doubting Thomas, the one who's like, yeah, I don't believe he rose from the dead. Well, he had a gospel. And in that gospel, you're just sitting down with Yeshua, Jesus, around a fire, having a conversation. There's no virgin birth, there's no healings, there's no miracles, there's nothing. It's just a conversation where Jesus straight up says, oh, yeah, no, I'm here to bring the sword. Like, I'm here to tear people apart with what I'm saying. Like, he fucking knew it too. And it's a great conversation if you read it, because he really starts to get at the non-dual aspect of what he was saying. Like, right at the
Mhm.
end, he's like, and a woman has to become a man, and vice versa, right? We have to recognize there's no division, that the ideas aren't actually reality whatsoever. But it was all of everything he's ever said that had value without any of the dogma and bullshit.
Wow, that sounds epic. I have got to check that out.
It's very, very good, and it's not that long either. It's not even close to a comparison of any of the other gospels. It's quick, and it's point like it's so much more about being here, you know, the present moment. It's not all this crazy ass shit. And it's interesting how, you know, be it Thomas, be it Judas, be it Mary Magdalene, growing up, like those are all people who were like, oh, they were the bad ones. You know, like Judas was the one who betrayed Jesus. Doubting Thomas didn't believe. Like, meanwhile, those are the ones that were actually closest to him, and they weren't the ones so egotistical. And the ones who were, you know, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I haven't read all of them, but especially which one, John, that everyone's fucking quoting all the time is like the most egotistical gospel out there. And so it makes sense that, like, oh, everything's quite symbolic. And with, oh man, with all of it, and that word you mentioned before, Jouska, I wonder with that, with like taking the ideas as truth, the conceptual ideas, you know, man recognizing woman, woman recognizing man. It's like you can't have so much of an idea in order to recognize that. And so Jouska being, having a conversation in your head, like nowadays, it's not just one word, but on the flip side, being here is just one word, right? It's like being present. Oh, it's like, oh, I'm better at being present, as if that's just one thing. But being present, being here is everything that's actually happening versus the fiction in my head. And right now, if we're having a conversation in our head, someone will ask you, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm thinking about this because of this, because of that, because of this. And someone could go on for fucking hours talking about that. It's not just Jouska. And so I wonder, on that spectrum of like, being here to Jouska, it's like that's almost like a indicator of where we're at societally and how reflective the words are. Like believe, how it used to be just to care for, and now it's like to, I forget what it is now exactly, but the modern definition, like how that'll shift, and if it will turn into just like, oh yeah, Jouska, and it's irrelevant what was going on. It was just like I was focused on bullshit, I was focused on assumptions, I was focused on all these things, as opposed to actually being here where everything is actually happening. I like that word.
Totally. And as like a philosophic person, right? That's another thing that like I have to keep in check is like this what is the word that I want to call it? I don't know. Tendency, I guess. This tendency to like think. It's actually really nice to be like, you can do. Like, it's like, yeah, I can have Jouska when I'm having a hypothetical conversation, or I could have a conversation. Let's go have a conversation, actually. Let's have a real one. Like, why not? Or like back to like my point about like, not wanting things. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting and cool to observe. Let's just do the things that we said we were going to do then. Let's just do that just for the sake, just because that's at least something to do, So like having a bias towards action has like been really helpful for me. It's like reflecting is cool, but like doing is just as cool. Doing is actually just as cool.
Absolutely. It's funny because I went through a lot of phases where, I got really cerebral for a certain period of time. And I heard this expression and it grounded me really quick, was that philosophy is the disease for which it should be the cure.
Mm.
And I had to take that in. I'm like, shit, that's really good. Because while you're sitting there philosophizing, you're not actually living, which is what philosophy is really all about, right? We're talking about life, but we're sitting here in our head, kind of acting like lords of the universe instead of out here actually enjoying ourselves, experiencing enthusiasm. And so I find it always so very interesting. But on the other hand, right, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's an interesting paradox that you can get to the realization, and this is actually the Sufi realization, that in abandoning one's wants, you find connection. But if you want to find connection by abandoning your wants, you're still holding on to one. So eventually you just have to let go and just be where you are. Eventually the pathway to self-awareness is an addictive way of avoiding self-awareness. Right? It's just another journey to see yourself on, just another way to measure your progress, just another way to compare yourself to everyone else. And that is not living. That's still being in your head. That's still being in this fictional world that you can exist within all of these assumptions and perceptions and habits and all of these things that you feel comfortable with, because the alternative is you don't know and you're right here. And that's all you get. And what's odd is that it seems like it's fairly straightforward, but we never spend any time actually cultivating that experience. We never actually spend any time cultivating presence without preparation for that moment. It's like, oh, I'm going to be present like 15 minutes. You're present now. You're just thinking about it. This is something that Andrew said earlier that made me think, like, in that prison cell, the door is open. The door is open, but we're so scared to go outside, right, that we would actually rather look at it as closed. We would actually tell ourselves, no, it's hard to let go of self-judgment, than to recognize it's only something you can do now. It's not something you can do forever. It's something you can do now in each and every moment. So it's recognizing that it doesn't matter if you're in a prison cell or outside. You can go back and forth as often as you'd like to if the door's fucking open. In which case, it's not a prison anymore. It's just another way of experiencing life. It's just a room that you can go into from time to time instead of a place that traps you and makes you feel like you can't face reality.
And and so it's like Jouska is just stepping back into the prison cell of certainty for a second. And when because for me, I've been getting a lot of like childhood memories recently, and just feelings of being a kid. And you think about, and this is a way we've at least for me, I've recently, Ray's kind of been talking about it like a sleepover for a while, but like the retreats we do every couple months, they very much are just like that. They're just a sleepover, because we've talked before. I've mentioned like there's no agenda, no structure, no yada yada yada, and we get pushback sometimes. Like, what do you mean you don't have a meditation hour in the morning? What, you don't know what's going to be best for these people? Who are you to be running a retreat if it isn't in control, if there isn't certainty, if you don't know what's going to happen? Because then anything could happen. Like, who the fuck are we to assume that we know what's best for someone showing up? It's like, again, all we can do is be as authentic as we can, be ourselves as much as we can. But it is very, very childlike, and there's a massive component, obviously, of being a kid that we forget and we lose. But just the bouncing around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, like all kids have ADD, ADHD. It seems like, because it's it's like the shift is thinking that there is, a linear track and you're on this trajectory. But when you start feeling like you're living again, you do bounce around, because that is reality, is uncertain. It's not on a track. There is no path that actually exists from right here to the next thing that you do. It's just kind of, you're here, and the more you keep being here. And I say even that, even like keep being here. It's like, what the fuck does that? Where else have I been? Like, when else have I been other than here now? And just that idea that I can control what's next, that I can control something else that I deem to be not here, that just kind of gets in the way of that continuation of that, you unfolding, reality unfolding, like actually living. Because there's a lot more relaxation in that, in being more childlike, bouncing around, than the tension that comes with being sure. And I think that, at least for me, has been more than enough reason to keep being here.
1,000%. Like, that's another thing that I think is underrated, is just being more childlike as an adult. Like, that's something that like we should really hold on to. Like, that's worth fighting for. Like, our maintaining our inner child is worth fighting for. Like, there are like some games that I have. Like, I just have games. It's like, remember games? Remember like games? Like, games were awesome. Or remember just like the things that you would do with friends. Like, man, being a kid was fucking great. And just because we're older doesn't mean doesn't mean that like we can't do those things anymore. Like, once again, that's just another bit of the programming. Like, we're told that you can't do those things anymore, one way or another, but it's just totally not true. And that's why I think that's why like learning about social constructs is like so fun, because it kind of melts reality anyway. You kind of see like, oh wait, things aren't made out of concrete, like they're made out of clay. Like, oh, I can like make this something else. And it opens like the mind up to like all of the different possibilities that can be. And like one of them is like, dude, you can eat whatever you want for breakfast. You can eat soup for breakfast. Crazy. You can eat soup for breakfast, cereal for dinner. There's this scene. What movie is that? There's this scene. It's an iconic scene. I don't know why I can't remember the movie, but like they stand on top of the counters and it's like, or maybe it's a meme where it's like, remembering I have free will. It's like someone is like on a counter or something. And it's just like, you can do that. Like, you have a kitchen counter. You can stand on top of it. You have free will. It's actually crazy. But I think that like a lot of the unhappiness that we experience or people experience in society comes from like totally forgetting all of the free will that we have.
Stagnation. right? It's that stagnation. It's trying to find a comfortable space, thinking that comfort is somehow the same as feeling alive, that comfort and fulfillment are synonymous, and they're not. Fulfillment is something that continuously has to happen each and every moment that you're existing. It's not something you ever get to. Like, you never get to a point where now I'm fulfilled, I'm just going to coast for the rest of my life, right? That said, Felecia, first of all, I want to say this has been awesome. It's been just a pleasure having you on the podcast. We're going to wrap up here shortly, but I did want to ask you a question. You kind of already answered it in terms of games and playing, but sometimes, and you mentioned this earlier, that when you first started creating content, it was almost easier. And I think a large part of that was the fact that you didn't have a set idea of what the right way to do it was. And now you have ideas based on kind of what's worked, what you've seen have certain results, so on and so forth. But that said, obviously you still push yourself, you still question things, you still try and tackle new things. When you do get into that mentality where, like, fuck, this isn't as fun as it was a week ago, right? What would you say is something that helps you ground yourself, something that helps you pull yourself out of that thought and actually get back involved with just the doing, which is, of course, where that enthusiasm reemerges?
Oh my gosh. This is such a great question. And I am so excited to say this answer. Okay. And actually, like throughout this conversation, I remembered the source of my second um, existential crisis. And it had to do with the nature of work. And it's all going to tie into the answer. Stick with me. But it had to do with like the nature of work. So like after I quit corporate America and I basically was like, I'm going to like go out into this entrepreneur world and like wherever it's just open space. And it was like scary. Okay. Every now and then it would be like, wait, what's the point? Right. Or like, what is the point of my work? Because when we are in, for example, corporate America, the point is money, right? The point is like status. The point is like, I have to take care of my family. Like, it's like, there are other motivations behind it. But me, I didn't have any of those. I had already had the money, right? So I couldn't even tell myself like, oh, that's why. Like I already had that. I ran away from that. It couldn't be because, status. It was like, no, when I used to walk in a room and tell people I was a software engineer, like the way that their face would light up, like I miss that so much. Now I tell people I'm a content creator and they're like, that makes sense. I'm like, damn it. No, I want to be surprising. So it wasn't any of those things. So my second existential crisis came from like, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I read a book that changed everything. Um, it's called The Courage to Be Disliked. And it's basically, it's like it's a fictional book. And it's a hypothetical situation where like a kid finds a philosopher in the woods and then asks him all the questions about life. So one of these questions or one of these topics that they went over in front of a fireplace, of course, is this nature of work and like why work? And basically what the philosopher in the story made me realize is that, every day when we get out of our bed and we go to the coffee shop and we get coffee and we get on social media or we watch a movie, all of these things throughout our day that we experience is because someone else worked. It's because someone else contributed. Like someone made this comforter, someone made this bed. Like there was an entire team of people who engineered this bed to give me the most optimal experience that they possibly could, right? Like there are people who go to work every day to like make this coffee and they clean I don't know any coffee terminology, but they clean the coffee machine so that way I can have like good coffee. And then I come home and I turn on Netflix. Like there are engineers at Netflix who are like thinking deeply about my experience as a viewer. Like everyone cares so much and is contributing to my experience. And so for me to like wake up and like, well, why am I here? It's like you're here to say thank you, right? Like you're here, your job is to reciprocate. Your job is to give someone else that moment, right? Like that's the point. there are so many things in our lives that we can be appreciative for. And it's like the best way to be appreciative is to like give, is to give. Like if you're happy for what you received, you give in return. So yeah, absolutely. There are definitely times where like I feel, you know, not as enthusiastic about making content, but like that has been the thing that always brings me back is like, no, even if it's just a second, like someone watches a video of mine and it's literally 60 seconds. But like if they were not smiling first and then they see my video and then they smiled, like I really did something. I contributed something just as impactful as the person who made the coffee and they got it at the right temperature for me. And like now it's good for like the 5 minutes that I'm drinking it. All of it, everything matters, you know, because we're living in a society where we're all contributing to each other. I know that like mentally, it's like individualism, right? But like in reality, we're all collaborating. And it's like actually mind blowing when we realize all of that. Like even us right here on this podcast, like think of all of the people that were involved in making all of this technology, whether it's like your mics, your lights, Zoom, all of it, the seats that we're in, like it's actually insane. And like that's the reason why we're meeting right now, creating this content for people to consume like on their way to work. It's like, this is the game. Like we're all contributing to the same pot. And especially with conversations like this and like with my content, it's all about like positivity, right? Like you want to have a positive impact. You want, sure, someone can tune into a podcast where it's, you know, doom and gloom, fear mongering, like they could tune into that. But that's why your podcast needs to exist so that people can tune into something different. Like it's actually extremely important when we actually contextualize it all. So,
That was
yeah.
beautiful. And I absolutely love it. The only thing I'm going to toss in there before I hand it over to Andrew is the idea that it's only a positive impact if they walk away happy. And the fact is that there are mentalities where we get so caught up in ourselves that somebody being authentic sets us off and actually makes us upset. And that leads us to an insight down the road as to why it made us upset, because we're afraid to be ourselves. And so I would say just keep being you, because that's the only measure of the ripple, is how authentic you're being.
Thank you.
Said, and at the end of the day, you are the world, right? And so that influence is enough in and of itself. It's like, holy fuck, the world set this into whatever me set this, because there's not a division between that. And so waking up and realizing like I'm the world, you know, the things I do, the mentality I bring has influence. I can have a, even if it feels like just a tiny little smidge, some push on reality in some way, shape, or form. The most basic things of just, you know, letting go of myself a little bit, being a little bit less selfish. It's like if I can spend my day and then it's like jump in. That push maybe gets, you know, a little bit more the more you continue to jump in. So maybe that's just what it's all about, realizing like you're not separate from the world. You're not having influence over anything but yourself, because we're it. And so us shifting, us changing is the world shifting and changing. And so changing, you know, yourself, the way you look at things, maybe letting go of a couple assumptions, jumping in a little bit more. That has far more influence than we probably could ever realize. And it's exciting for sure to be a part of it, as we all are. But Felecia, this has been a blast. This has been really fucking fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate everything you're doing, putting yourself out there, sharing things, just being yourself, staying curious. It's fucking awesome to see, and I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today.
This was so fun. Thanks so much for inviting me. This was epic. We've got to do it again.
I was just going to say, I can't wait to have you back, because there were just dozens of thoughts where I'm like, oh, we could get into that. And then something else good came up. I'm like, fuck. So yeah, no, there's a lot of conversation to have. Hopefully one day we'll even get you out to one of our retreats, because I know that you would just enjoy it so much. They're so much fun. It's exactly what you enjoy doing, just being enthusiastic, you know, being interested, being present, you know, around with people who are doing the same. So you're not the one person surrounded by egotism trying to just hold your light. You know, everybody around you is very much like, I can dig that light, I'm in on that. So I look forward to our next conversation, Felecia. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to our listener for joining us. As always, we will see you next time.
And
Bye.
real quick,
Yes.
Felicia, did you mention where people can find you?
Ooh,
Yeah, you can find me. It's just Felecia for the win. Just Google it and then pick the platform of your choice.
Perfect.
beautiful.
Definitely check out her stuff.
Check out my stuff. Thanks, guys. This was so much fun.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.